Welcome back to The Full View. Now, the whole of South Africa is preparing to move to lockdown level 3 after the President's address last night. Some of the details will still be ironed out and announced by ministers in coming days. We continue to bring you analysis of that speech. And let's ask, did the President say the right things to a nation profoundly affected by the lockdown and still preparing for the worst in terms of the toll of COVID-19? To discuss, we're joined by author and analyst Eusebius McKaiser. Great to chat to you, Eusebius. Given the economic pain that many people feel right now, surely this was a time for the President to show genuine empathy. There's also that fear of what is to come. Let's start with that. Do you think he got the tone right last night?
I think he did, insofar as the entire decision to go to lockdown 3 level, Francis, is a recognition that people are deeply frustrated vis-a-vis the economic hardship that they are currently experiencing. The main benefit of going to lockdown level 3 is obviously that if you open up the economy, that you can save jobs in the process. And consequently, in that sense, the President absolutely demonstrated that he heard what middle-class people are feeling, what indigent people are feeling, what working class people are feeling, and what businesses are feeling as well. So it wasn't in his words and in his body language, because the man is incredibly fatigued. So he continues to look a little bit like someone who is very tired, and understandably so. But in terms of the decision itself, if one looks at the content of the speech, there was empathy insofar as the logic for next week's decision is to reach out to people. In this conversation, we can of course debate whether or not he got the balance right between that and the public health pressure that he's got to think about. I'm not sure that he did, but in terms of empathy, I think the only way to justify the opening up of the economy is that he was feeling on behalf of South Africa the desperation to get economic activity going again.
And you're so right. There's been a polarized debate around should we put health and lives first, or the economy and livelihoods. Why don't you think he got that balance right?
Because I think that we all know that at some point we have to open up the economy. It's a question of when rather than if. But here's the problem for me, Francis. From an operational point of view, the question is, are businesses ready to make sure that they're going to comply to the letter and the spirit with all the necessary occupational health and safety regulations and the COVID-19 specific things that need to happen? In many of our workplaces, even within the media, we have seen cases where staff members have suddenly found themselves getting COVID-19. We have seen a mining company, for example, in the last 24 hours reporting on another outbreak. We know that this particular virus love it when people are close together, and when you look at industry being open up, such as, for example, our factories, there's going to be an opportunity for this thing to spread. The same is true of public transportation sector. The trains are going to be vectors of disease in the weeks ahead. And if our government doesn't have a proper grip on getting PRASA to optimally provide safe transport for South Africans over the last 20 years, what are the chances that between now and the next week or two they'll be able to do so? So that balance for me wasn't struck very well. He demonstrated a deep understanding that the economy matters, and that if you don't open up the economy, people will die anyway. So it's not so much economy versus health. It is health and economy versus health and economy. But what I would have liked to see is a signaling to business that business, we've made a concession in this speech. We're opening up the conversation, but we're putting you on notice. You have a moral, quite apart from a legal duty, to make sure that the conditions are in place so that your staff members do not die in the weeks ahead, that you don't put super profits above the health of people. And it's that kind of muscular leadership that I thought was absent in terms of signaling that the key work to be done between now and June 1st is workplace readiness and public transportation sector readiness for compliance.
And you're right, this matters so deeply because lives matter. On a political note, I mean, the EFF is saying government is being irresponsible opening up. So any problems actually plays into their hands. They're positioning themselves basically to blame government as that death toll rises.
That's absolutely true, and I think the EFF is being a little bit opportunistic here. I think they write partly to signal that it's critically important that the practicalities are in place, as I've said, in terms of occupational health and safety in particular. And if you take a long view of South Africa's industrial history, Francis, obviously we're not the best exemplars of capitalism, also being caring in terms of the well-being of human beings. Very often, if we take the mining sector, in terms of the history of the mining sector in this country, bodies, and let's be honest, poor black bodies in particular, have often been used as inputs in the making of super profits. So EFF is tapping into that. But here's where I think EFF is also being opportunistic nevertheless. There's an incredible burden of leadership on President Cyril Ramaphosa and the rest of the cabinet currently. Every single scenario is suboptimal. If you don't open up the economy and you do what EFF wishes, which is to say you don't even allow the sale of alcohol to happen, you don't go to lockdown level 3. In that scenario, you will also have great human suffering, not just economically, by the way, but also in terms of the public health implications of people not seeking good health-seeking behavior, such as getting vaccinations, getting their medication chronically for diabetes, for TB, for other kinds of conditions they suffer. So if you're in the opposition, you have the luxury of being able to critique the options that government settle for, because the reality is every single option has got downsides and every option is suboptimal.
Exactly. This is so difficult. I mean, look at schools, and we'll be talking about the vaccines later and the health risks that are opening up in Africa because of the focus on COVID-19. But Eusebius, another matter that has played out for weeks, the presidency and the ANC has tried to put down the whole debate around the role of Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma versus the president. The suspicions that he was overturned by her, say, on the cigarette ban last time. Do you think they've managed to put that debate down effectively?
I don't think they can, but that's only because the people who criticize Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma have got a fixed view of her, Francis. And I'm delighted that you've asked this question, because I don't think it's been pried open enough. The bottom line is that we operate on the basis of a constitutional principle called collective cabinet responsibility. The cabinet debates a decision, whoever wins the argument wins it, and the losers in cabinet have to collectively own it. And then they decide who's going to be the person that articulates it to the public. On this occasion, Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma has been prominent in media over the last couple of weeks only because she's been nominally the person representing the collective cabinet view. But to ascribe to her super ministerial powers is to fundamentally misunderstand how cabinet works and what the constitutional principle of collective cabinet responsibility is. Every single member of cabinet is party to that decision and has to own it. But I think what's going on here is also a combination of sexism with also some, I think, cultural wars going on here. I think the reality is that President Cyril Ramaphosa is well loved. He sounds like me more than he does, the average South African in a rural area. His dulcet tones land a particular way. And many of the middle-class critics in particular, who do not like Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, want to drive a wedge between her and him, because it also serves their own interest to sustain their love affair with the president and to malign her as a black woman and to malign her as the former wife of someone we all didn't like, President Jacob Zuma. I think those cultural aesthetics, no one will own up to it, because that is the stuff of political psychology, and it's hard to say what the motivators are when someone makes a criticism that on the face of it seems rational, that her policies on smoking bans appear to be not justified by the light of the evidence. But I want to call a spade, and I think the reality is what's going on here is not so much people correctly observing her having more power than she actually does. What's going on here is that instead of blaming the entire government for an unlikable decision, they are driving a wedge between a woman that they can easily malign and the person that they love, and they want to hold on to that love affair with him. But if you are unhappy with the smoking decision as a South African and the fact that you can't buy cigarettes next week, then you should have your wrath being aimed at the entire government, not just at her. If you isolate her, you reveal more about your own politics than you do about an understanding of how cabinet works.
Yeah. All right, we're running out of time, so I want to talk about the other sort of context that this speech came in. A spat between Dr. Glenda Gray, very publicized, and the health minister. The president saying we are listening to the scientists. Do you think he handled that specific context well?
I think the president did, but I think he could have done better. Last night we heard the president is open for debate, that he loves a diversity of views. The following morning, Francis, you and I wake up to an article on News 24 suggesting that the board is now embarrassed and apologizing for something that she had expressed in her personal capacity, not even representing the board. So I think the whole thing is much of a muchness. They should all be adult about it. Did she make mistakes? Absolutely. Is it embarrassing for scientists to make inaccurate, factual claims about Chris Baragwanath Hospital? Absolutely. Should we lose her expertise because of it? No. They should be all adult, get into the same room and recognize that we should put the country first, retain her skill set, and she's learned from this. But the chilling effect, I think, is unhelpful. And I think between the acting DG of Health, the minister, Dr. Gray herself, everyone could have done better on this particular issue.
Yeah, concerns around free speech for scientists, for health experts. All right, we're running out of time. Thank you so much. I wish we had more to unpack the president's speech. That was political analyst Eusebius McKaiser.